Hi guys! So in this video today, I wanted to talk about my blighted ovum miscarriage experience. And the reason I'm making this video is because when I was diagnosed with blighted ovum, I didn't know what it was, and it was through YouTube that I was able to see we'll find out what it was, and also like listen to about other women's experiences with it, and so it really helped me with it, kind of. So I felt maybe I should also share my story. And basically, I also feel like miscarriages are obviously such a painful experience, but it is also something that is so much more common than we like to think it is. It is so common, and especially blighted ovum, as far as I know, is one of like the top reasons for early miscarriage. And you know, especially for women who, when they go through it, it feels like, why me? You know, just because I guess it's not talked about as often as it should. I'm not saying it should be made into a norm, but at least something that, like when I went through my very first miscarriage, when I lost the twin, Amar's twin, it was like the worst thing ever. And I think no matter, I guess, how much you expect it, or no matter how much you know that it happens, it's okay. The pain part is obviously still there. It is very hard. But I think also just not knowing is what, or not expecting it at all, and then it happens, is something that, should, it makes it worse, is what I think I'm trying to say. And after having my first miscarriage, obviously that was like the most devastating thing. So when it happened again, it wasn't as bad because I knew it was a possibility and I had gone through it once. But obviously this miscarriage was completely different than the one when I lost the twin. Because the one when I lost the twin, I was still pregnant with one child, and the body sort of just absorbed the twin, and I had like bleeding for just a few hours, which was not bad at all. So this time around, when Amar turned 1, I was also nursing him. He turned 1, and that's when I had decided that I was ready to try for another baby. As you know, my first and my second are 6 years apart, and Amar was conceived through IVF. After my IVF experience, I was able to learn a lot more about infertility, and I learned a lot more about PCOS and my options and stuff. So I had done some research, and when Amar was about 6 months old, I had gotten back on metformin. So I started with lower dose and I increased it, and I was at about 2,000 milligrams a day of metformin. So I was taking continuously for 6 months, and I was also nursing Amar. So finally, in September of 2014, I got my very first cycle. And as soon as I got it, I went to my doctor and I talked to her about it, her opinion, and I said, I'm ready to have another baby. I want to try Clomid, and I want to see if that works for me. And she said, with your history, obviously I needed some help, and I've been on metformin too, so she said fine. So she prescribed me Clomid, and she prescribed me with 50 milligram for 1 month to try it, and if it didn't work, then the next month to do 100 milligram. So obviously I was afraid of having multiples and stuff, so I took her advice and I started with the 50 milligram, and I think I took it from, I in my next video, when I talk about Alina's pregnancy, I'll have it more in detail because she was also conceived through Clomid. But I think I took it through day 2 to day 5, I think. Not exactly sure, but whatever the instructions were. So I followed it exactly. I continued to take my metformin as well. And I had ordered my ovulation strips from Amazon, and I got like this full package of like 40 ovulation tests and an extra 10 pregnancy tests or something for like $15. And I had done my research, and I knew that they were very, very accurate and sensitive, and there was no reason for me to go buy it from the store and spend a ton of money when I can get it for very cheap and it's still as accurate. So long story short, I think after certain day is when I started to test them. And so I could see the line get darker. I had like a sheet of paper and I would tape it on there. So each day I would take my ovulation things, and a few days later, the line did start getting darker. So as you know, with ovulation strips, it has to be, the line will always be there, but it has to be dark or darker than the control line. Then you're ovulating. So I had them in a row, and as soon as I could see that it was starting to get darker, is when we started trying, and I think we did, every other day until I had ovulated, and then I waited, I want to say 9 DPO, and I started to take the pregnancy test. And the 9 DPO didn't show, but the 10 days past ovulation, there was a faint positive line. So obviously, I kind of wasn't expecting for my first try to be positive, but I was like over the moon. But mother's intuition, I don't know, it felt to me like it was too good to be true. And for some reason, as excited as I wanted to be about it, and I kind of was, I was still very nervous, and I've never had this feeling before. But I put it off to, it's because I lost the twin in my previous pregnancy, because I had went through that. Because once you've been through a miscarriage, it's so hard to have a very content, calm pregnancy your next time, because you are always afraid. You're always on edge. So I thought that that's why I was getting the feeling that I was getting. But I kept telling my friend, too, my best friend, I was like, I don't know, I'm really excited. It just feels too good to be true. Like I'm really nervous. So I remember just having this feeling, and I remember for some reason I didn't want to share with everybody. I just told like my inner circle of friends, and something in me was just like, don't share the news yet. Get your ultrasound done first. So basically, I you know, I didn't get any morning sickness or anything. I wasn't feeling super pregnant or anything, but that was also the case with the Mars, so that I didn't think anything of it. And so my mom had happened to be visiting at the time, so when she came from India, she made a comment and she said, oh, if you would have been pregnant, I would have been here to help you with the delivery and stuff. And I was like, well, since you mention it. And so then I told her, and she was very happy and stuff. And I remember my doctor's appointment was going to be in like 2 weeks from then. So around 8 weeks pregnant, I had my first doctor's appointment, and we went to the ultrasound room. And as soon as they put the probe in, I could clearly see the sac, but no baby. Like, not even a yolk sac, nothing. And it just felt like my heart just dropped, but at the same time, I felt like, a little voice in my head was like, I knew it. Like, I just knew it. I knew something was off. So obviously, a part of me was like, maybe there's still a chance. But I also knew my dates because I was tracking it, and I was, it was exact. I knew when I ovulated. I knew when I first got my pregnancy test. So there's no way that I was earlier than I thought I was. So, I looked at my mom and I said, it's empty. And my mom had never heard of this. And she was like, well, what do you mean it's empty? You are pregnant, right? And I said, yes, but there's no baby, So I didn't know exactly what it was right away. They were like, it's blighted ovum. And so I talked to the doctor, and she said, well, I don't want to say anything yet. I'm going to have you come back in 2 weeks so we can see again. So I said, okay, fine. But I mean, I knew. I knew. So then after, in those 2 weeks, I did a ton of research. I found out exactly what blighted ovum was. There were some stories of like, oh, my dates were off and they ended up seeing a baby or something or another. Or I went to somebody else and then they found the baby because it was just hiding. But I mean, this is where I had gone with my pregnancy with Amar, and I just knew that the diagnosis was correct, and that it was, not going to be a viable pregnancy. So Basically, if you don't know what it is, it's kind of it has to do with the chromosomes of the baby, and it's not a healthy embryo. So then your body rejects it, and then it just kind of absorbs it back in. So pregnancy does take place. So then one part of your body absorbs it, but another part of your body still continues to think you're pregnant. So then it still continues to, the HCG levels are there, and your sac grows, your uterus grows and stuff. So yeah. So then but then there's no baby. So 2 weeks later, I went back in. They did the ultrasound again. The sac had gotten a little bigger, but I mean, not much. And again, it was still empty. So they said, "We're so sorry. It's not a viable pregnancy. You have two options. You can either try to do it naturally. We'll give you some medicine so it helps get everything out, or we can schedule you for a DNC." Now, if you know my history already, I've already been through, the IVF, I've been through C-sections, I've been through this, that. So to me, another like surgery, even small, like it was not an option. So I said, let me try to do this on my own. And so I took we went and got the prescription, and went home, and I took it like I was supposed to. And then, soon I did start to bleed, and bleeding got heavier and heavier, and it started to get very, very painful. Like, they had given me pain medicine because they said my body would have contractions and I was going to be in pain. And so I took the pain meds that they gave me, but I like to think that I have a good tolerance of pain, but at that moment, and mind you, like with my labors, I've never progressed past a certain point. So I've never had really hard labor, and I don't want to say this was like extremely hard labor, but it was like my body was really trying to get it out, so it was contracting, and the pain was insane. It was unbearable, and it was exactly like contractions where it would come and then it would go, and it would come and it would go, and when it came, it was the worst pain I can think of. But also keep in mind, everybody handles this differently, and I've seen videos of women and heard stories of women who take the medicine and it clears out right away with the very minimal pain, and there are women who have excruciating pain, and I happen to be one of them that had the absolute most excruciating pain. So every time I would have to, I'd go to the bathroom, and like I would feel like chunks of, stuff and blood and clots coming out. And so I would think like, okay, maybe that's the worst of it. Maybe it's done. And then, it just would continue to hurt. So I remember having to call at night at the doctor, the nurse on call, whatever. And I told her, I said, I can't do this pain. Can I? And then they told me, okay, you can add more medicine. You can take it more frequently or whatever. And that's what I did, and with the heating pad and everything, and I was able to get through it that night. So I had a follow-up appointment, and when I went into my follow-up appointment, they checked with the ultrasound, and they said it's still not all out. I still have stuff in there. And they said, again, you could take more medicine, or we can do another DNC, but they said because there's only a little bit left, we'll give you the medicine. So at this point, my dad had come, and both of my parents had already left to go back to India. So it was just us, and I took the medicine again. And at this point, I am bleeding non-stop. Like they say, if you fill up a pad in an hour, you're bleeding too much. And that was my case. And not only was the bleeding so bad, my contractions were insane. Like it was coming and going and coming and going every minute. And I was on my arms and knees, and I looked at my husband and I said, you need to take me to the ER right now. I can't do this anymore. And I remember I had called my best friend up and I said, listen, my husband did, and she came over with her son, and she, to watch the kids while we went. And then my husband, we rushed to the ER, we got admitted. they checked me in, and they right away knew I was in so much pain. So they gave me um, some, they shot for pain medicine. They had my IV going and everything, and they said, okay, we're gonna do an ultrasound and see where you. Or no, they said yes. So we did an ultrasound. They said you still have some stuff left. So they said we're not gonna discharge you. We're gonna check you into labor and delivery, and you'll have a DNC in the morning. So I was devastated. I felt like, wow, not only did I go through all of this with medicine, but I'm still going to end up with a DNC. Like, it was so devastating. So I told my husband, because Amar was just a year and he wasn't used to being with other people. So he was crying so much. So I told my husband, listen, they've got me on good pain meds. My pain is tolerable right now. You go ahead and go. I will be fine. I'm going to sleep. I'll be okay. So he left to be with the kids, and I was at the hospital, and the pain was very minimal at this point, kind of still uncomfortable, but very minimal. And they took such good care of me at the hospital. So I stayed the night, and I want to say early morning. And they gave me a button to push, so if I was in a lot of pain, I could push it, and it would release some medicine and the pain medicine and stuff. So come morning, I want to say it was about 5 a.m. and I remember my DNC was going to be at 7. At 5 a.m., the pain rushed back up, like super intense, and I had to go to the bathroom. I just had to go. And so I got up and I went to the restroom, and as soon as I sat down, plop, like it was a big gush with like the biggest piece of clot or whatever. I'm so sorry. This is so graphic, but it, and as soon as it came out, my body relaxed and the pain kind of just went away. So I was like, maybe that was it. So that's when the nurse came in, and so I told her what had happened. So she said, okay, that I'll mention it to your doctor. So then she left, and basically when the nurse talked to my doctor was like, do one more ultrasound before you take her into DNC. So they took me into the ultrasound, and they did the ultrasound, and they said, it's cleared out. You're good. You don't need to do a DNC. Hallelujah. Like, very last minute, and my body finally got it all out. And that was a very, very painful experience. That when I got pregnant again 6 months later, like, my biggest fear was, and even when I got pregnant this time, like, my first thought was, I cannot do another miscarriage. Like, it was, my first one was physically fine, but emotionally very hard. And the second one was emotionally hard, but physically so painful and so bad. And it just, yeah, I mean, what needed to happen happened. I was meant to have a miscarriage, a blighted ovum, and I did. Obviously, yeah, so I thank God, for my husband and my parents, my friends, like everybody that was there for me. And, I was able to get past it. It really did affect me, keep in my mind for a while. And I was in a lot of pain. It was just emotionally very like scarred, I guess, for a while. And I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to accept it. I didn't even like tell any of my friends like how bad it was until later on. But yeah, so that was that pregnancy, which was pregnancy number 3, that ended in the miscarriage through blighted ovum. And another fear of mine was like having another blighted ovum. And they did say that usually when you have one, you usually don't have, your chances are not as high to have a second one in a row and stuff, but it's still there. The fear is still there. Once you've had that miscarriage, that fear is always there. But at the end of the day, there's always hope, because after that blighted ovum, I had one beautiful daughter, and now I'm pregnant again. So with a healthy baby, and there's always light at the end of the tunnel. And unfortunately, sometimes there's just some obstacles in our life that we have to go through, we have to overcome, and it just makes us stronger. And I feel like that's exactly what it did for me. It just made me stronger, and it just made me both of my miscarriages made me much more of like, I want to say, a better mother, because it just made me realize that these precious babies are just, they're miracles. No matter how easily someone gets pregnant, no matter how easily you're pregnant, like every child, every pregnancy, every baby is a miracle. And yeah, so so there's my story with that. And if you have any questions, any concerns, you're going through this, like, comment me below, send me a message. We can talk about it. And so that's my story for today, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.